Good morning everybody and welcome back to the old world, where today we're gonna tear down civilization and perform rituals in the name of dark gods. I prayed to God for the strength to save my people, and God has answered. Taurox, the Great Brass Bull, is the legendary beastman lord introduced in the Silence and the Fury DLC. His passions in life includes entry-level gymnastics and crushing the fragile bodies of the elderly beneath his massive bulk. Don't you run away from me, I'm gonna burn down the retirement home. Okay, that sounds a little bit graphic, but don't worry, we also do other, more family-friendly things, like beating up the Bretonnians. Most people would call this a valiant defeat. I would call it a pretty good start. But that will unfortunately have to wait, because we start our adventure all the way over in the godforsaken wasteland that is Nagaron. Which means that for the first time in my over 600 hours of playing this game, which is insane by the way, we are gonna play on the western part of the map. And before you say it, no, that one time that I sent over an army of ratmen to start my very own fancy version of Vietnam does not count. Mostly because it ended in a draw. Totally ended in a draw. I did not lose. Speaking of having a good time, who are the Beastmen? They are the chaos worshipping half man, half goat, half cow, half whatever this is, and all fun. I don't know why, but playing as the evil factions is always a good time, especially when you get to see 300 tons worth of cowmen crush your enemies using gymnastics. And that is precisely what we did in our first battle of the game against the Dark Elves, the edgy cousins of the high and mighty inhabitants of the Great Donut. Their strengths include I don't care, and I will crush their feeble little elf bodies beneath the hooves of our endless herds. Now I'm gonna be honest, turning their bones into paste probably would have been a whole lot more satisfying if I didn't have the sneaking suspicion that they enjoyed the experience more than I did. So we burned down their cities as well. Being a horde faction, we don't occupy cities like the other civilized factions do. We tear them down and raise big rocks instead, because there's nothing as irresistible to a beastman as a massive, well-erected rock. And with that, we have now created our first Bloodground spanning the nearby provinces. The end goal of any Taurox campaign is fighting a battle against the King of Bretonnia and call France for the whole goddamn shebang. They are pretty important people on the grand scheme of things, so they won't fight just anyone, especially in a tag team event. So to get their attention, we first have to enact several rituals around the world. And the more of these rituals we enact, the more bonuses we will unlock, until finally we are famous enough to put the people's elbow to the aristocracy. We are now a whole 5 turns into the game, and we have just destroyed our first faction, which means that we are about to be at war with our second, and the ones closest to us happens to be the Drowned, led by Cloystra Direfin, the court singer of Bretonnia, who was so used of getting her own way that when her ship went down in a storm, she straight up said fuck death, came back as a ghost, and is now the captain of her own galleon crewed by the undead. Or at least she was, until we finished what Mother Nature couldn't. Having won our first battle against the Drowned, we gather enough dread to make our first rewards of dread purchase. Unlike other factions, you don't have to pay for upkeep on your units, because the Beastmen have embraced the utopian ideals of a cashless society. So instead, you have to unlock more of your higher tier units using dread, which you gain by burning down the civilized world and rampaging forward until you crush the setting sun beneath your hooves. Which brings me to the other mechanic specific to Taurox, rampage. Since he is a massive metal bullman filled with the anger and hate of the entire universe, for each battle he wins, he gains momentum and rampage points, which are used to give you better and better bonuses the longer you keep your rampage going. Lose too many fights, however, or go too long without one, will reset your progress back to 0, and you will have to start all over again. And I decided to spend our first dread on upgrading our herd stones so that they will start at level 2. This will give us a bigger garrison and some minor bonuses. Anyway, having crushed their army and banished them into the dark depths of sub 200 strength ranking, the Drowned tried to bribe me with gold, like that actually held any meaning to me. I naturally refused and continued our rampage throughout the lands, something that was made all the much easier when a solar eclipse hit and instantly healed all of our units. Anyway, having waded through hordes of zombies and generally having a good time, we finished our first ritual. So, with a second faction taking a very long walk of a short pier, I realized that I have made a mistake. I have just burned down 2 cities without setting up a new herdstone, meaning that we gave all of those undead a second dirt nap for no benefit to us other than making my day just a little bit brighter. It's not really a big deal, but putting down a herdstone does not cost us anything, and even the tiniest amount of ritual power brings us that much closer to our ultimate goal: freedom from the tyranny that is man. So, to remedy the situation, I declared war on the Shadow King. That is the guy who has spent the last couple of 1,000 years doing nothing more but hunting down dark elves, which is something I can definitely get behind. And boy, did he live up to his reputation. He did not sit around waiting for me to burn down all of his cities like the undead had done, because the moment I erected my rock, he came and he tried to push it back down. However, during those thousands of years, he had forgotten the first rule of war. Just because you're in a defensive siege battle, that does not mean that you have to be on the defensive. So, I lined up all of our boys and we trampled those bow-wielding cowards into the dirt where they belong. And then we burned down all of his cities, destroyed our third faction, and finished our second ritual. It wasn't a very big one, but that's because they might have pushed over my rock while I was gone and I had to start all over again. But that taught me a very valuable lesson about greed, because I could just have performed the ritual the moment I saw their army coming. Sure, I would only have gotten like 18 ritual points, but that is still 8 more than the 10 I got. Anyway, since we had a bunch of dread saved up in the bank thanks to all of the elven cities we had just burned down, I decided it was time to expand our armed forces by adding another lord to the team. And we had 3 to choose from. We had Kasrek One-Eye, the Scourge of the Empire and Bane of Tods everywhere, Malagor the Dark Omen, aka Birdo on account of being a fucking bird, and Morgur the Shadow Gave, who's into some really weird shit. And I decided to pick Kasrek because he is the most normal of all 3, which is saying something. And this is when I realized that maybe I should have bought some more higher tier units, because we have to fill up his army with guys armed with sharp sticks, flying women, and some very good boys, which isn't the most impressive force in the world, but it will just have to do, especially since we were immediately attacked by Mr. Bones and the Calcium Bandits. And the game told me that it was going to be a close defeat, but since that would be really inconvenient for me, I decided to win instead. With that going on, Taurox continued his rampage by crossing the Sea of Chill with some rather unchill intent, killing people. We were going to kill people. Dark elves if you want specifics, and some Viking dudes, and maybe Fabio as well. And we do that for 19 turns until we found ourselves at the gates of Nagaron, the capital city of Malekith, the Edge King of Darkness, which for some reason was occupied by Grombrindal, the White Dwarf, who is such a monumental badass that every dwarf not only know who he is, they can also recite his entire life story from memory. And we are now going to kick his ass because I have the perfect rock to put right here. And this is where we hit our first speed bump, face the first actual challenge that we will have to overcome in order to grow and reach our full potential, or some shit like that. Grombrindal had come out of his mountains and he was now going to beat the ever-living shit out of Kasrek so he could push over my rock, which is a pretty dick move if you ask me. So we fought it out mano a mano, and while I would like nothing more than to say that it was close and that we really made him work for it, that would be a lie, because it really wasn't and he really didn't. The beastmen he did not smash to death with hammers, he torched with his flamethrowers. It was an absolute massacre and not a single beastman escaped with their life. But at least I still have my dignity and my slightly above average height, which is more than they have. So yeah, my right-hand man ate it, so now Morgur got a promotion and he's on the other side of the fucking ocean punching the hornet's nest that is Bretonia. Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you that we conscripted a third lord and he has been spending his time harassing the French. And they are not very happy about it. But I am. No, but seriously, he's about to be fed to the fucking guillotine and there's nothing I can do to stop it. So with yet another lord lost to the void, we were alone, and we would have to face this bearded menace on our own, and I'm not sure I can do this. Nah, I'm just fucking with you. I shot straight at him without a second's hesitation. To call what we had a victory would have been an understatement, because we only lost 200 beastmen while killing thousands of dwarves. And right after that, we ambushed another short king and we did it all over again. If you haven't realized it yet, I am having a very good time. Burning down cities and performing rituals in the name of dark gods together with my gymnastics team are memories that I will cherish for as long as I live. But that might also just be the toad I've been licking doing the talking. Anyway, a few turns later and I decide that it is time to find our legendary rune-tortured axes. You see, much like Dr. Martin Luther King, I had a dream, but where his was about racial equality, mine was about dark elf on dark elf violence. So in order to put a stop to said violence, I killed all the participants. It's a thankless job, but someone has to do it. Next, we spend a few turns completely wiping out Grombrimbro and Calcium Bandits from the beginning of the game. It wasn't very interesting, but since there are few things I enjoy more than hearing bones snap like dry twigs, I included it anyway. We are now halfway through the game and I need to start planning for the end game. Burning down Nagrond has been a good time and all, but I was starting to feel the itch to move on. But where would I go? While I pondered this conundrum, I declared war on some more elves. The thing is, if you declare war on one donut elf, you declare war on all of them. Because all they do all day is sit on their shitty island echo chamber telling each other how great they are. So I decided to shit on their parade and vowed to finish my last ritual on their island. But first, we actually have to get there. We began the war with them mercilessly shooting me with arrows. So I threw huge rocks at them. And that's when the end game started. The vampires had all woken up and their numbers were beyond counting. Get it? Counting, you know? Like the Muppet account. God, I'm so fucking funny. God damn. God, I'm so funny. Because I had once again put the endgame crisis to 1000% as an epic prank on the rest of the world. Having taken our first step upon the donut soil, I could feel that my destiny was at hand. It wouldn't be long now until the final showdown. We began our campaign by erecting one of our impressive rocks in the ruins of Taurox, and from there we spread out and burned down the entire western part of the island. Now the elves did try to stop us, but resistance was futile. After 17 turns we completed the final ritual and we were ready to claim our destiny. We trailed to the site of the final battle and we faced the wrath of man. They had set up their armies on the high ground in an attempt to make me charge up after them, so I placed my army behind them instead. We smashed into their backlines before they could react, and when they finally were able to bring their units to bear, the rest of my army, who did not have vanguard deployment, smashed into them. The entire battle lasted for a whole 4 minutes and 48 seconds. We had smashed the cream of the human armies, and with that we had won the Taurox campaign, but since the final battle had been somewhat lackluster, I decided to have one final battle. The strongest faction in the game was now Vlad von Karstein, and he had a lot of friends. So I gathered some of my own and I went to beat the absolute shit out of him. And that battle only lasted 6 minutes and 25 seconds. Because that was how long it took for my army to break and run. The worst part isn't that we lost, it is that my entire army ran away. The Scourge of the West, the Humbler of Ulthuan, was defeated by some bony boys because his army was scared. And I wasn't very happy about this outcome. So After several of our armies had been hunted down and destroyed, we managed to ambush Vlad and in the end beat the absolute shit out of him. And that's where we're going to leave it. And my pride had been salvaged, we had finished our goals, and now I'm gonna leave this world to its fate and not return when I am needed the most. And that is all I got, so thank you all so very much for watching. I tried to get this video out as fast as possible, so let me know down below what you think. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace!